Hey friend, welcome back to Align Vitality. I'm Tanya Angus-Heather, your host, and I've been recording this series, calling it The Weight of the Chair, for about 4 weeks now, and in each episode I've tried to be honest about the loneliness, the anxiety, about the weight of carrying things you cannot tell anyone. But today I want to be probably more honest than I have been yet, because I'm going to tell you about the season of my leadership I actually almost quit. Not as a rhetorical illustration, not as a distant memory I've fully processed and packaged into something tidy. The real experience, the season that came closer to ending my leadership than anything before or since. That cost me more than I've talked about publicly. That changed the way I lead. And if I'm being fully honest, it changed something about the way I experience leadership that has never fully returned. I've sat with whether to share this, how much to share, how to share it in a way that honors the people involved, most of whom I still lead, while also telling the truth about what I experienced. And what I kept coming back to is this. The reason I started this series is because I believe that the things leaders carry in silence cost us more than they should. And the things we're most reluctant to say are usually the things that would most help someone else feel less alone. So today, I'm going to say the thing. Hopefully with the appropriate amount of care, with the appropriate limits, but honestly, because you deserve that. And honestly, I think I do too. So let's get into it. Do you want to recharge your energy, restore your mental clarity, and finally feel like yourself again? Well, you are in the right place. Welcome to Align Vitality, the podcast that offers faith and functional health strategies for high-achieving, health-conscious women in midlife who want to heal from chronic stress, body and spirit. I'm your host, Tanya Angus-Heather, a certified functional health practitioner, Christian life coach, and fellow midlife woman who knows what it's like to look strong on the outside while struggling silently on the inside. Here, we get real about anxiety, brain fog, burnout, hormone shifts, and the hidden toll of chronic stress. And more importantly, we talk about the path to healing. Each week, you'll find practical strategies and faith-fueled encouragement to help you restore your God-given energy, calm your nervous system, and reclaim peace in this season of life. If you're ready to stop pushing through and start thriving in the abundant life you were created for, let's get after it. This is Align Vitality. I'm not going to name every detail of this season because some of what belongs to it also belongs to other people, to a team that I care very much about, to an organization that I'm still a part of, and protecting them matters more to me than telling a complete detailed story. But here's what I can tell you. Like many leaders, I led my team and my team of leaders through one of the hardest seasons in recent history. A season that asked things of us, leaders and team members alike, that none of us had been prepared for. That required decisions that nobody wanted to make. That asked people to do really hard things in impossible circumstances, that put leadership teams in the position of being the face of decisions that were painful, decisions that came from above, that we implemented faithfully, that cost us something in our relationships with the people we led. I think a lot of you know exactly what season I'm describing, and if you led a team through it, whatever your role, whatever your organization, I think you may already know something about what I'm about to share. Because what I experienced in the aftermath of that season was something I was not fully prepared for. The relationship ruptured. Not with everyone. Some of our team members extended grace. They saw the impossible position leadership was in. They understood that we were navigating something nobody had a roadmap for, and they chose to trust, not blindly, not without their own grief and frustration, but genuinely. And others did not. And the ones who did not, their anger was real. Their hurt was real. And for a season, it was directed at leadership, at me, at my leaders. And here's where I want to be honest about something that is not comfortable to admit. I let it in. I let their assessment of me, of us in the hardest season any of us had ever navigated, become the lens through which I saw myself as a leader. I want to describe what that actually felt like, because I think naming it specifically is the most useful thing I can do for the leader who's in a similar place. It wasn't simply the anger that was hard. I had navigated team conflict before. I had delivered difficult feedback. I'd received difficult feedback. I'd made decisions that not everyone agreed with. That wasn't new. What was different this time was the specific nature of what felt like it was being said. Not just, we disagree with this decision, but who you are as a leader, what you have built, what you've invested, who you have been to us is not enough to earn our trust through this. Decades of showing up, of caring about people, not just in their professional roles, but in their full lives, their families, their losses, their celebrations, their struggles outside of work, of being the kind of leader who did the work alongside people rather than from a distance, of investing time and emotional energy and personal sacrifice in building something that was genuinely good. And in the aftermath of an impossible season, a season none of us chose, it felt like all of that was being weighed and found somehow insufficient. I want to be careful here because the work I've done since that season has given me a much more compassionate understanding of what was happening for them. The anger that gets directed at leadership in hard seasons is almost never fully about the leader. It really is a trauma response, a grief response, the complicated human need to locate pain somewhere, to make the discomfort mean something, to have a place to put it. I know that now. I believe it, and it has genuinely changed how I hold what happened in that hard season. But in the middle of it, I didn't have that lens yet. In the middle of it, I felt the thing that I think may be one of the most specific wounds a deeply invested leader can experience. The sense that your legacy has been defined by your hardest season rather than your whole story. That the chapter that cost you everything has become the chapter people remember most. And that everything you built, the trust, the culture, the years of genuine relationship was more fragile than you knew. I wanted to run away from leadership, not because I was tired of the work, because the work had wounded me in a place I didn't know I could be wounded. What made that season so particularly devastating was not just the circumstances. It was what I allowed the circumstances to do to my sense of self. Because here's the truth that I've had to sit with and work through in the years since. A significant part of what made their reaction so destabilizing was that my identity as a leader was more dependent on their assessment of me than I had realized. I'd built a leadership identity around being the one who cared, who showed up, who invested, who was trusted and respected because of the relationship, not just the role. And when that trust was called into question, when the relationship that I had poured so much of myself into felt like it was rejecting me, I did not have a stable enough internal foundation to stay rooted in who I actually was. Their verdict threatened to become my verdict, and I almost let it. This is the people-pleasing wound in leadership clothing. The need for the people you lead to reflect back to you the leader you believe yourself to be. The inability to hold your own identity when the external feedback contradicts it. The experience of disapproval, even disapproval you intellectually understand and contextualize, landing as a threat to your very sense of self. I say this not to add shame to an already heavy experience. I say it because I think it is one of the most important things I've learned about myself as a leader, and because I think it is far more common than anyone talks about. The women who go into leadership because they genuinely care about people, who invest relationally, who build culture through relationship, who measure their leadership in significant part by the quality of their connections, are the women most vulnerable to this specific wound. Because when the relationship becomes the primary vehicle through which you experience your worth as a leader, and the relationship ruptures, the worth goes with it. It's not a leadership failure. It's a signal that the foundation needs to go deeper than the relationship, deeper than what people think of you, deeper than the legacy you're building, all the way down to the one whose assessment of you does not shift with the circumstances. I want to say something else that I maybe haven't said publicly, because I think leaders are expected to respond to relational rupture with only grace and understanding. And while grace and understanding are genuinely where I have landed, there was something that came before them. Anger. My own anger. At the unfairness of it, at the years of investment that felt dismissed, at the sense that one impossible season, a season I had not chosen, leading decisions I had not made unilaterally, had the power to redefine how I was seen. I was angry that the decades of evidence seemed to count for so little against the weight of one hard experience. I did not know what to do with that anger because I did not think I was allowed to have it. Because leaders are supposed to be understanding. Because good Christian women are supposed to extend grace. Because the right response, the spiritually mature response, was compassion for what our people were experiencing. And those things are all true, but they are not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I was hurt, and I was angry about being hurt, and for a long time I managed both of those things. Performed the grace and the understanding while privately sitting with a wound I was not allowing myself to fully acknowledge. And unacknowledged wounds do not heal. They go somewhere else, into the body, which is where mine went, in ways I've described in other episodes. Into the withdrawal from leadership investment, a pulling back, a protective guarding of the relational energy that had been so freely given before. Into the question that started visiting me more often than I'd like to admit. Is it worth it? The thought of quitting leadership has been more present since that season than it ever was before. Not because my circumstances are worse. In many ways, they're better. I have more wisdom, more self-awareness, more clinical tools, more spiritual grounding than I had going into that season, but something shifted in me and in the culture of leadership more broadly. Because what I experienced in my context is not unique to my context. The landscape of leadership has changed. Since that seemingly impossible collective season we all navigated, there has been a broader cultural shift, a shift towards self-orientation that makes the service dimension of leadership harder to sustain. A shift in the implicit contract between leaders and the people they lead that has not fully recalibrated. Leading people is harder now than it was before. I say that not to be cynical, not to be discouraging to the leaders listening, but because I think naming it honestly is more respectful to the leaders who are experiencing it than pretending it's not real. And because I think the leaders who are struggling right now, who are finding the work harder than it has ever been, who are asking more often than before whether it's worth it, deserve to hear that it's not a personal failure. It is a real and widespread reality. And navigating it well, leading with integrity in a harder leadership environment, is not a lesser achievement than it was to lead before. It may actually be a greater one. Now, I don't want to leave us in the hard without telling you what has happened in the years since, because God has done really awesome work. Not the kind of work that removes the scar, the kind that transforms it into something useful. The compassion I described in my earlier draft of this episode, the specific, earned ability to sit with someone in their hardest moment because I've been in one myself, is real. The wound became a widening of my capacity to understand what people carry, to recognize trauma responses for what they are rather than taking them personally, to hold space for anger that's really grief wearing a different costume. I am a better leader because what that season cost me. I'm not a more comfortable leader, but I am a better one. And the identity work, the work of building my sense of self on something that does not shift with other people's assessments, that work is the most important thing I've done in the years since. More important than any leadership development program, more important than any clinical training, learning that my identity as a leader is not something others confer, and therefore not something others can revoke. That has been the most stabilizing work of my leadership life. Now, I'm still in the process. I'm more resilient than I was. And the God who was with me in the parking lot, in the wanting to run, in the is this worth it, in the years of doing the work to find a healthier lens, that God has been so faithful. Not by removing difficulty, by doing the work that only He can do in the places I could not reach on my own. I want to go to a few passages that have been genuinely stabilizing in the years since that season because I think they offer something specific to this experience. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 through 9 says, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." Hard-pressed, perplexed, struck down. Paul doesn't pretend these are not real. He says they are real, and they are not the end of the story. I've returned to this passage more times than I can count in the years since this difficult season. Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. "Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." This one has probably been the most convicting for me and the most freeing. The approval I was so devastated to lose was never the approval that was supposed to be holding me up. I had built something on a foundation that was never meant to bear that weight, and the rupture, as painful as it was, exposed that in a way that nothing gentler could have. Psalm 18, verse 2. "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge." My rock, not my team's assessment of me, not my legacy, not the relationship. The rock is the one who does not shift. And when the relationship shifted, when the legacy felt threatened, what held me was finding my footing on the rock instead. Not all at once, not without discomfort, sadness, anger, grief, but eventually, really, solidly. Now I want to speak directly to the leader who recognizes herself in what I've described today. Maybe you've led through the same impossible season and your relationship with your team has not been the same since. Maybe you're still carrying the wound of having your character discounted in a moment that was not entirely in your control. Maybe you're still doing the work of separating your identity from the assessment of the people you lead. Maybe the thought of quitting visits you more often than you want to admit. I want to say a few things directly to you. What they said about you in their hardest moment is not the full truth about who you are. Trauma responses and grief responses are real things, and they are not always just. They locate pain where it can be located. They attribute meaning to a target that is available. The anger that came at you was real, and it was not the complete verdict on your character, your leadership, or your legacy. The investment you've made was not wasted even when it felt unreceived. I know it felt like the years of care meant nothing when the rupture came. I know how devastating that specific feeling is, but the character you built, the way you led, the integrity you maintained, the people you genuinely served, that is not erased by a season in which it was not seen. Seeds planted in difficult ground are still planted. The identity work is the most important work. If what I described about allowing people's assessment to become your assessment resonated with you, please hear me. That is the work that matters most right now, not a new leadership strategy, not a resilience framework, the work of building your sense of self on something that human disappointment cannot reach. That work is available to you, and it changes everything. You are not alone in finding it harder now to lead than before. The landscape has shifted. Leading people is genuinely more complex than it was. You are not failing because it feels harder. You are leading in a harder environment, and doing so with integrity is a genuine act of courage. Staying is not failure. Staying is leadership. You are still in the room, still showing up, still leading people, some of whom may still carry some resentment. And you are showing up with integrity and care. That's not nothing. That's everything. Heavenly Father, some of the women listening today have been wounded in the specific way I described by the people they invested in most, in the season that cost them most. They are carrying the weight of a legacy they are afraid has been defined by one chapter, the grief of investment that felt unreceived, the anger they've not known what to do with, the question, quieter than it used to be but still present, of whether it is worth it to continue on. God, meet them there. Not with a rebuke for the anger, not with a quick pivot to grace, but with the honest acknowledgement that what they experienced was real and that it cost real things. And then, when they're ready, do the work that only you can do. The work of building identity on something that human assessment cannot touch. The work of transforming scars into something useful. The work of making leaders out of the women who almost weren't, who stayed not because it was easy, but because you held them in the staying. Give them the compassion for themselves that they so freely offer to everyone else. And remind them that the one who called them into their chair has not changed his mind about them, even in the hardest chapter, even when they almost quit, even now. In Jesus' precious name, amen. Folks, I'm still in the room. Some days that costs more than others. But I'm here, and I am more myself, more grounded, more honest, more genuinely useful than I was before the season that almost ended it. That's not a triumph, it's a testimony. And I hope that testimony is somehow useful to you. Until next time, lead well, live well, and be well. Thank you so much for joining me today, my friend. If today's episode encouraged or blessed you, would you please take a minute to leave a rating and written review on Apple Podcasts? It means the world to me, and it helps more women like you discover this message of hope and healing. If you're ready to take the next step in your functional health journey, join my interest list at alignvitalityhealth.com. And remember, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be medical advice, nor is it intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health. Until next time, I'm Tanya reminding you that healing is possible and your best season is still ahead.